At a time when everything seems to be getting more expensive, it's nice to see a company like PRS team up with Sweetwater to create something like this, a more affordable version of a really popular guitar that's still made in the USA with all the high quality components to it. This is the Blackout Edition Sweetwater exclusive CE-24 Now normally when a guitar company introduces a more affordable version of an already existing guitar, you can expect to see some compromises with the parts being used, the finishes, and where it's made. There's not really anything lost with this model. This is still made in the USA. It still has the 8515 American-made pickups on it. You still have the same exact tuners. It's still got a mahogany body with a maple cap on top and a beautiful finish on top of that. The difference being there that this has a satin nitrocellulose finish as opposed to a gloss nitrocellulose finish that comes in the production model. The Blackout version also comes with an ebony fingerboard as opposed to a rosewood one. On the production model CE-24, coil splitting is available to you via a push-pull on the tone control knob. The caveat being, when you do have it engaged, you're either always going to be having the coil split on both pickups, or both of them are always going to be in humbucking mode. With the 2408, you have the option of independently controlling each pickup, whether it's split or in full humbucking mode. And I really like that because, for example, say you're playing in a verse where you want a really clean or maybe an ambient tone and the neck pickup split, but when you get to the chorus of the song, you want the bridge in full-on humbucking mode. All you have to do is have the little mini toggle switches set so this one's split and then this one is in regular operation. Flip the toggle switch down to the bridge and you're good to go. Everything else is exactly the same as the production model. You're still getting the pattern thin neck profile, you're still getting the 10-inch radius, you're still getting the bird inlays, and you're still getting the same exact gig bag that you would get on the other model. For today's sound demonstrations, I did a little bit more than I normally would. We used two amplifiers. I used both the Fender Princeton Reverb and I used the Dr. ZZ Plus because when I wanted to get into the gain, I wanted to hear it with a 12-inch speaker, but also because I wanted to test out a pedal that I think sounds awesome with this guitar and highlights some of the split coil tones that are just beautiful with effects on them, and that's the Electro Harmonix Grand Canyon. When we're using it with the Z, it's via an effects loop, and when we're going through the Princeton, it's right in front of the amp. More often than not, when I do guitar demos, I don't use a lot of time-based effects outside of the spring reverb that's built into an amplifier, or maybe just a tiny bit of delay here and there. But today, I wanted to use the Grand Canyon because I felt like with the split coils, it really shines with those sorts of effects. And these guitars often get labeled as kind of jack of all trades or heavy metal instruments. Now, I don't have an amplifier to really show you what this thing can do in that sort of like shred or 80s metal kind of thing. But what I was able to do is show you what this thing really is capable of for everything else. It's super flexible. You can go from a brilliant clean sound with almost no effects on it to something that is heavily modulated, and it still maintains clarity because these pickups really excel at that. The playability of the guitar was great. The fretwork is great. The fit and finish was great on the instrument itself. I like this pattern thin neck profile. I prefer something like a pattern vintage, but this is really comfortable all in the same. The nut was cut perfectly well. All I did to this guitar to get this thing up and where I was happy with it was adjust the setup just a little bit via the truss rod and then tune it down a half a step. I love the way that these guitars sound and feel in half step down E flat. On to the not so great though, because I actually had two small issues with this guitar before I leave you with one thing that you should definitely consider before you make a purchase of one of these instruments. The first thing that didn't go exactly as to plan was the fact that this arm right here is not what it shipped with. This is the arm that came with the SE CE-24 that I also have, because the one that they sent me, this one, was for a core model, and because it's a different bridge, it didn't want to fit. Now, the second problem I had wasn't as simple of a fix, but it was the first time that I've ever had this sort of issue with a new PRS guitar, proving not everyone is perfect. The electronics had a little bit of a bug. The neck right here, this little toggle switch, wasn't splitting it when I first got this guitar. So I had to pull this control cavity cover, have a look, and what had happened was one of the wires was just astray, which could have disconnected during shipping or something like that. At the end of the day though, I just had to heat up the soldering iron, throw on a little bit of fresh 6040 Rosen solder, get to work. Obviously you heard the guitar function perfectly. The only thing that I would think that you would want to consider if you're looking at this guitar, because those two other things, they're few and far in between. I've been through a lot of these instruments and they're not common problems. But the nitro satin, this is something I want to talk about here, because depending on your play style and depending on whether or not you're cool with your guitars aging and relicking and sorts of things like that, may or may not be your thing. The big pros of this: it feels awesome and it looks awesome. It's got this kind of like 3D thing going on when you hold it up in the light. I love it. I think it's killer, and it's obviously a way that they were able to keep the cost down on this compared to the gloss finishes. The problem though is it's going to be based on your technique, and if you're okay with potentially paint eventually over time, it's not going to be an overnight thing coming off of the guitar from picking at it. I'm somebody who plays with both a heavy hand, bad technique, and helicopter as far as the funk goes. So I can already see pick marks on this guitar in several areas, and I'm just laughing to myself because I never notice it on other instruments, because every other instrument I have that isn't a PRS has a pick guard on it. So for me, I don't think twice about it. It's only once I finished playing today's demo, I recorded for about 2.5 hours, and I looked at the guitar and I was just like, whoa. I was just like, this thing's already starting to get worn in a little bit, man. I don't know how this thing's going to hold up in the long run, but that's not down to the guitar's fault. That's all on my bad technique and the way that I play the instrument. So if you're really somebody who's a bit more refined and a bit more proper with your technique, this is something that's probably never going to affect you. So if anybody from PRS ends up watching this video, I think it would be awesome if you added the 2408 version of the CE-24 into the full-on production range, and also make it available on a gloss finish. If you're interested in checking out this Sweetwater exclusive version of the CE-2408 in the blackout finish, obviously you can only do it at Sweetwater. There's going to be a link to that in the description of this video. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take it easy, everybody.